America's deal with Iran. The White House says it's a victory for diplomacy and peace, but others aren't convinced. American prisoners set free. The Iran deal reunites families that were torn apart. Reaching out to the Jewish people. How the Pope's visit to their Rome synagogue is helping heal old wounds. And Dr. King remembered. Catholics and others honor the American civil rights icon. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, January 18th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us as we learn more about America's new deal with Iran. I'm Brian Patrick with our White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn, beginning team coverage.
Brian, it was a hectic Martin Luther King weekend as the Obama administration completed a deal, releasing 4 American prisoners held in Iran and lifting sanctions on Iran's nuclear program.
This is a good day.
And with that, President Obama lifted crippling economic sanctions and freed $100 billion in assets in an historic deal with Iran, ending years of isolation.
The nuclear deal was never intended to resolve all of our differences with Iran, but still, engaging directly with the Iranian government on a sustained basis for the first time in decades has created a unique opportunity, a window to try to resolve important issues.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said the deal, in exchange for checks on its nuclear program, was good for the growth of the country. The plan fell into place on Saturday when Secretary of State John Kerry met with Iran's foreign minister in Vienna. It happened after a UN agency verified Iran had completed the necessary steps to restrict its nuclear program. And just after that meeting, U.S. officials confirmed that Iran had freed 5 American prisoners, including Washington Post journalist Jason Calvi. The U.S. released 7 Iranians. In response to critics who called the prisoner swap bad for America, Kerry said to look to the future.
We can build trust if we see that this program indeed is adhered to thoroughly, and also if Iran will begin to join with us to bring peace to Syria, deal with Yemen, reduce its activities in other countries.
Critics have been vocal on this on both sides. Today, I sat down with Democratic Representative John Delaney. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
So what does this mean for the future of the United States and for Iran? Are we going to see dramatic changes?
The deal, the big deal, if you will, with Iran was just about nuclear weapons at the end of the day, right? A lot of us wanted it to be about a whole range of things, but it ended up being a nuclear deal.
And is that bad?
It would be better if it was more comprehensive.
And you're going against the president on this.
Well, I'm not really going. I supported the deal, even though I had major reservations about it. I thought on balance at the end of the day, once the deal was announced, once the president supported it, once the Prime Minister of Great Britain supported it, once the Chancellor of Germany supported it, once the President of France supported it.
Once the Pope supported it.
Once the Pope supported it. Once the whole world supported it, even with reservations, I thought it was the right thing to do to move forward and to make sure we're deliberate and relentless in making sure Iran complies with the deal.
Representative Delaney, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The deal to release 4 prisoners was hashed out during a dozen secret meetings over the course of more than a year. One prisoner, a pastor, whose children have been without their father for 3.5 years, celebrated exuberantly. Jason Calvi tells us about their story and a nail-biting, last-minute glitch. Jason?
Iranian-American pastor Saeed Abedini has been locked up since 2012. Iran charged him with undermining national security. But a UN investigation says the pastor was unjustly targeted for his Christian faith. His wife, Naghmeh, has waited and prayed for this day.
It's a great, joyful day. My kids cannot stop just running around and asking me every other second when they will get to hug Daddy. So it's 3.5 years in waiting.
A similar longing for the family of former U.S. Marine Amir Hekmati. He was jailed for more than 4 years. A Michigan congressman will visit him in Germany with a message from Amir's dad, who couldn't make the trip due to health problems.
Every time I've spoken to Dr. Hekmati, he said he just looks forward to put his arms around his son.
Also freed is Washington Post reporter Jason Calvi.
He seems in good spirits. He's, together. He's really can't wait to get out there, see people, meet people. But right now he's got to focus on getting himself better and getting out there.
All three are being checked at a U.S. military hospital in Germany. No word on when they'll come home. And in a different case, Iran also released an American student jailed for about 40 days.
There was high drama as the plane with the three Americans was getting ready to leave Iran. On board was supposed to be the wife and mother of Jason Rezaian, but a misunderstanding by an Iranian military official wouldn't let them on board, so Secretary Kerry made a last-minute phone call to his Iranian counterpart, and the wife and mother were allowed on board before that plane took off. Brian?
Thanks, Jason Calvi at the State Department. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Moroccan police arrest a Belgian man of Moroccan descent linked to ISIS. The Interior Ministry says he had a direct relationship to the attackers who carried out the Paris terrorism. Those attacks on November 13th killed 130 people. A statement says the suspect was arrested Friday near Casablanca. At least one of the Paris attackers is still at large. 3 American civilians remain missing in Iraq tonight. This according to the Baghdad spokesman for the U.S.-led coalition against the Islamic State group. Iraqi security forces are searching for the American contractors. They were reportedly kidnapped while at the home of their interpreter in a Baghdad neighborhood. Vandals target a church in Jerusalem. Anti-Christian messages were found on the walls outside Dormition Abbey. Police believe Jewish extremists left the hateful Hebrew graffiti. Pope Francis denounces all religiously inspired violence during a visit to Rome's main synagogue on Sunday. He joined one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world in a sign of friendship at a time of extremist attacks around the globe. The Pope says Jews are the elder brothers of Christians. John Paul II also said that on his historic visit. He went there 30 years ago. Francis rejects all forms of anti-Semitism.
Sì alla riscoperta delle radici ebraiche del cristianesimo, no ad ogni forma di antisemitismo.
The visit continues the tradition that began with St. John Paul II in 1986, then continued with Benedict XVI in 2010. Our EWTN News Nightly producer Mary Shovlain bundled up against the cold in Rome tonight. Mary, explain why this visit by Pope Francis is so significant.
It's significant, especially now, Brian, because as we've seen throughout the world, the religious violence has only escalated, especially at the hands of Islamic extremists. Pope Francis said this was absolutely unacceptable, especially for the world's great monotheistic religions, referring, of course, to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So he started off with that very strong message, and he started off standing up for a standing ovation for the Holocaust survivors who are in the first row. And he also evoked during his speech saying that this and any anti-Semitism cannot happen anymore, anywhere.
Like John Paul II before him, doesn't Francis have a unique and special relationship with the Jewish community?
Exactly. We found out after he was elected Pope that he was very close to the Jewish community in Buenos Aires, where he was Archbishop. He would go to several of the Jewish celebrations. He has many Jewish friends, and it's wonderful to see how this has played out in his pontificate. He has met with several Jewish delegations so far, but this trip to the synagogue here in Rome was his first ever inside of a Jewish temple.
Not a very long trip, though. Isn't that really in a neighboring community to the Vatican?
It's interesting, Brian, the Christian community in Rome and the Jewish community here go back 2,000 years, so 2 millennia. They've coexisted here for 2,000 years, and only a river divides them, just the Tiber River. It's just a 10-minute walk from this side, the Vatican side, to their side. So they've lived close in quarters, not always a peaceful coexistence, obviously. Pope John Paul II making apologies for any persecutions that happened to the Jewish people at the hands of Christians, and his predecessor as well, Benedict XVI, did the same, and Francis echoed those sentiments, crying out in the name of any anti-Semitism, saying, that has to stop and we cannot allow this to go on.
All right, a short but very important trip for the Pope. Thank you, Mary Shovlain.
Thank you, Brian.
And Pope Francis greets several thousand migrants during his Sunday Angelus. Many of the refugees waved their flags in St. Peter's Square. The church worldwide marked a day dedicated to refugees Sunday. Europe is struggling to integrate hundreds of thousands of people who have been fleeing war, persecution, and poverty in their home countries. Many people across America honor the legacy of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The civil rights leader would have been 87 on Friday. Today is the 30th federal holiday in his memory. FBI Director James Comey placing a wreath today at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial here in Washington, D.C. And Catholic University of America students honor Martin Luther King Jr. in service to others. Their goal is to strengthen the community and grow in their faith. Wyatt Goolsby reports.
These college students woke early on this Martin Luther King holiday, loading up for a day's worth of volunteering.
Sometimes you gotta let your faith tell you which way to go.
This morning, the Catholic University of America gathered several hundred students, faculty, and staff willing to donate their time and talents. Here at Archbishop Carroll High School in Washington, volunteers weren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
We have cleaned all of the walls, we're priming the walls, and then hopefully maybe we'll get to some painting today.
Brooke Paris, a senior, has volunteered on MLK Day the last 3 years.
I think people have this conception that the church, the young church, isn't present and doesn't have a voice in our society. And I think when you see 800 college students who have the day off but are choosing to do service, it just shows that young Catholics are involved in our world.
Some of those young Catholics spent the day serving the elderly in residence at the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Over the holidays, the Little Sisters of the Poor received all sorts of donations, including canned foods. But as a health facility, they're highly regulated. Everything needs to be sorted and marked based on expiration date. It's a lot of time-consuming work, which is why the Little Sisters say they appreciate the help from the volunteers.
The volunteers went out of their way to make the residents feel special. Maude Fassett, a retired social worker, says their willingness to serve others means a lot.
And we wish, and I think I can say it for them too, that more people would do this, the things like they do, for people in places where they, have to live.
A sign of love on a holiday full of hope. In Washington, Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
We're blessed to be joined by Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Director of African American Outreach for Priests for Life. Dr. King, it's so good to see you, and isn't it fitting that this week is bookend by the holiday in memory of your uncle and the March for Life on Friday? How did his legacy really contribute to you becoming so active in the pro-life movement?
Well, my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he is my uncle because my daddy is Reverend A.D. King, his brother. And so he's Uncle M.L. They're in heaven now. But during his lifetime, he was known almost as an apostle of love after the Apostle John. And he believed that every human problem could be solved with compassion and the love of God. And so I believe even in my pro-life work, or any of the messages that I am able to share with people today, I still believe that it is human compassion and love with good communication. And you should really understand that as a news anchor. And so if we are sowing seeds of agreement, reconciliation, then we can begin to work together and stop the destruction.
How did he teach you, and what can he teach us about living the Christian life in our entire lives?
My uncle, M.L., modeled the Christian life. He was not a perfect man, but he served a perfect God. And so all during his lifetime, and I got married the year after he was killed, during his lifetime, I never saw him lose his temper, become angry, say or do unkind things to people. And I grew up with that. But not just him, my daddy, my granddaddy, my grandmother, my own mother's like that. So growing up with a man who modeled the love of God. Even when he was attacked, people would say bad things to him. His home was bombed. My daddy's home was bombed too. So when people did horrible things to Martin Luther King Jr., he prayed for them. He did not retaliate.
Dr. King, we remember him with you today, and we thank you for the good work you do in the pro-life movement. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, Democrats debate Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders expand on their plans. And a Republican candidate calls for a federal investigation of Planned Parenthood. What a full day for Pope Francis. He meets with the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, a delegation from the Lutheran Church of Finland, and on top of that, the Vatican security guards, thanking them for their service. The Pope also hosted royalty, the Prince and Princess of Monaco. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz calls for an investigation of Planned Parenthood. He says it would be one of his first priorities if he's elected president.
The second thing I intend to do is instruct the U.S. Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos.
Planned Parenthood leaders were caught in the undercover videos discussing the sale of aborted baby body parts. Planned Parenthood reacted last week, suing the group that produced the videos. Hillary Clinton tries to slow down Bernie Sanders' momentum. The Democratic presidential candidates debating for the last time before the Iowa caucus over the weekend. Clinton described her experience dealing with Russian President Vladimir Putin, while Sanders criticized Pentagon spending.
It's interesting. It's it's one, I think, of respect. We've had some very tough dealings with one another.
We have a $600 billion military budget. Very little of that budget, less than 10%, actually goes into fighting ISIS and international terrorism.
Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley was also there, but his poll numbers are well below the others. Star Parker is founder and president of CURE, the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. If Clinton were to lose to Sanders in the Iowa caucus and in New Hampshire, would that have any significance in the long run, I guess?
It could be very serious for Clinton because Mrs. Clinton lost to Barack Obama in Iowa. Most of the country didn't think that he would pull it out. Even blacks were not in support of him. And when you look at the data on how much ethnic groups support socialism, Sanders might pull this one out. So I think that's why she's taken every precaution this time.
If that would happen, how would that affect the Republican campaign? Or would it?
Well, what it would come down to is a clear, well, it depends on who they select through the primary process, but it would be a clear distinction between the two parties. Are we going to be biblical and free as a country, or are we going to be secular and socialistic? And Bernie Sanders represents socialism. So does Clinton, but he's out with it.
Now, you have been going to the Republican debates, the last one in South Carolina. What did you take from that? What was the direction they took?
Oh, it was a lot of noise. Actually, the moderators of the debate tried to bring up some substance, issues of entitlement, but I think that the rivalries took the evening. When you looked at Christie and Rubio, they couldn't stay out of their debate in New Hampshire, or Trump and Cruz, they couldn't stay out of their debate in Iowa, so it became a lot of noise.
As the caucus grows near, followed by the New Hampshire primary, what would you like to hear from these candidates?
Well, we need to know what they would do if they become the president. Trump has a lot of noise, if you will, but there's no real substance. What would you do about Social Security? What would you really do to protect the innocent? What would you do about school choice issues? What would you do? The list is long. So, yes, Iowans need to pull a little bit more out of these candidates, and hopefully, since there's one more debate before they actually vote, we might see some more substance.
Substance isn't too much to ask for presidential candidates. Star Parker with CURE, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Up next, God First. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is remembered for his message and ministry. And March for Life Chicago. We check out the biggest and coldest event of its kind in the Midwest.
Seems that I can hear the God of history saying, that was not enough. But I was hungry, and you fed me not.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quoting the Gospel of Matthew in one of his many moving speeches. Thanks for joining us this Monday evening, Martin Luther King Day. I'm Brian Patrick. Dr. King is known for leading the civil rights movement, but first and foremost, he was a pastor. Catherine Szeltner visits a Catholic church in Washington where parishioners recall his message.
For the man who pushed civil rights forward with just his voice.
But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop.
It's fitting this D.C. gospel choir honors Dr. King by raising theirs. St. Augustine is often quoted as saying, "He who sings prays twice." Parishioners at St. Augustine Catholic Church in Washington, D.C. take that message to heart.
Worship is not just our singing, it's really the lifting up our hearts to God. And so through the beautiful medium of music that God has given us, we take full advantage of it.
The historic Black Catholic Church honored the Reverend's legacy with an annual concert and mass on Saturday. It's a legacy that transcends both race and age at this parish, including 8th grader Caitlin Booth, whose essay on MLK earned her a first place contest prize.
Be with people that it doesn't matter what their color is, and by taking the first step of accepting people, you can reach the end of the staircase.
The church's pastor reminds us Dr. King was great because he first remembered his king.
He's not really known because he had a dream. He's known because he actually, not because he was a dreamer, because he was a doer. You know, really putting the dream into action. And really, it wasn't just his personal dream, it was God's vision. And to the degree that our dreams match God's vision, that's when they truly can have the power to change the world if we're willing to commit ourselves, even to the point of our lives.
Catherine Szeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. And the fight to protect life at every stage is not really unlike the civil rights movement. Pro-lifers braved the negative 15-degree wind chill for March for Life Chicago Sunday. Organizers estimate more than 5,000 people marched in support of overturning the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion. Illinois Representative Randy Hultgren says he'll continue to push pro-life legislation in the face of the administration's opposition.
We're going to try and override the president's veto. It's going to be tough. We need help. We need people to call their congressmen, their senators. We need to get over 67 senators. We need 290 representatives. So it's tough, but this is important.
The National March for Life is Friday here in D.C. You can watch live coverage throughout the day on EWTN. Ann McGuire, Assistant Director for Education and Outreach for the Pro-Life Office of the USCCB, is with us. So ahead of the March for Life, tell us about this prayer initiative, 9 Days for Life.
Well, 9 Days for Life is the U.S. Catholic Bishops' annual pro-life novena. It began about 4 years ago in observance of the 40th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, but it received such a positive response that it became an annual thing.
Most of us pray novenas, but for people who are not familiar with them, explain what a novena is and its origin.
Well, novena is essentially the custom of praying for a certain set of needs for 9 days. Usually there are certain prayers involved, and the origin is the 9 days of prayer from Ascension to Pentecost, when the disciples were awaiting the coming of the Holy Spirit.
It's a beautiful practice. And why do you think prayer is so necessary in this fight to end abortion?
Well, I would say that we know that we can trust in God's loving mercy and His care for us, and we also know that we can't do anything on our own. And so it's important, particularly with such an important issue, to ask for God's grace and just to work through us and to end abortion.
The bishops have been so supportive of this. I know Archbishop Blaise Cupich spoke yesterday at the March for Life Chicago. We see our bishops and archbishops out there on a lot of these events. Will we see many at the March for Life?
I believe you'll see Cardinal Dolan and some other bishops, and typically some of the Eastern Orthodox bishops join the Catholic bishops on stage for the prayer at the rally.
Well, so many people are going to be involved in the March for Life in one way or another. How can we get involved in 9 Days for Life, even though a few days have ticked by?
Well, you know, I have to say that every prayer counts, every sacrifice makes a difference. So anyone can jump in at any point. So even though we are on day 3, it absolutely is fine to just jump in. People can go to 9daysforlife.com. That's with the number 9, 9daysforlife.com. And there they can find all the different ways to access the novena. There's a mobile app, there's social media, they can download and print it from their computer. There's all kinds of options. And so if they go to that website, they can get the novena, and then also discover other ways that they can get involved through there.
Download the app right after the show. Ann McGuire with the USCCB, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick, and tonight we leave you with today's ceremony in the Holy Land. Eastern Orthodox Christians commemorate the baptism of Jesus at the Jordan River. Good night. God bless you.